So introduction to jQuery. The purpose of jQuery is to make it much easier to use JavaScript on your websites. jQuery is a lightweight, write less, do more JavaScript library. jQuery takes a lot of common tasks that require many lines of JavaScript code to accomplish and wraps them into methods that you can call with a single line of code. The jQuery library contains the following features: HTML, DOM manipulation, CSS manipulation, HTML event methods, effects and animations, Ajax, and utilities. I won't get into the Ajax or utilities much. I don't know if Mr. Gudmundsson does or not, but Ajax is a nice way of passing data back to the server to get some stuff accomplished. When I was working for Department of Defense, when we finally got to use jQuery and we used Ajax, it made those calls so much easier to write. It was just like a line or two of code rather than lines and lines of code to get the forms and the data to pass back to the back end of the code and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if you go into Mr. Gudmundsson or not. And I don't know how many companies actually use it. I know, like I said at the end, when I was working for Department of Defense, they finally started using it. Getting started with jQuery. A lot of the big companies out there use it. Google, Microsoft, IBM, Netflix, they all use jQuery. I've read that it's a dying language. I know Bootstrap is going away from jQuery and trying to get back to vanilla JavaScript kind of stuff. Vanilla JavaScript is just basic regular JavaScript, no libraries or anything like that. So when you get a real job, whether it be local, out of state, for a big company or a small company, I don't know who will be using jQuery, if they will, or if they still do. But like I said, just to introduce you to it so you know what it looks like, what it can do. If you want to research more into it on your own, you're more than welcome to. I know Mr. Gudmundsson, when you go to his class next semester, he uses it for form validation, and it's pretty nice because as soon as you tab off something and it's not matching what you set it up as, it'll flag an error right away for you and stuff like that. So a little bit nice. One of the big advantages, I'll get back to that in a minute. But so getting started with jQuery, and you add jQuery to your code, there are several ways to start using it on your site. You can either download the jQuery library from jQuery.com, kind of like when we did Bootstrap. You can download that whole Bootstrap file if you wanted to and keep it locally on your machine, and then add it in as you need it. And that's kind of what they're doing here with this script source. They download the whole jQuery library, and then you just link to it with the script source, and then you can just pull what you need out of it. Like I said, just like Bootstrap, if you happen to download Bootstrap. Or you can include jQuery from a CDN like Google. And here it is here. Bootstrap was the same way. You could download it from, I guess, the Bootstrap website, if I remember correctly, and just call it like that. If you don't want to download it all and host it yourself, you can include it in that content delivery network. One big advantage of using the hosted jQuery from Google is that many users already have it downloaded from Google and visiting other sites, and it can be loaded from a cache, so it makes it a little bit quicker and easier to load. And then if you do it from a content delivery network, usually make sure that once you request that file, it's served from a server closer to you, so it makes a little bit faster loading time. So that's the two ways you can put it in your page: download the whole library or just use the content delivery network. Most of the time you'll just see people using this content delivery network. A lot easier, a lot quicker, save you the resource of downloading that whole file and putting it in your Yeah, your directory or whatever. The syntax with jQuery. jQuery, you select or query an HTML elements and perform actions on them. The jQuery syntax is tailor-made for selecting HTML elements and performing some action on the elements. So the basic syntax looks like it's a $, and then the selector you want, and then the .action method that you want. So the $, is used to define the access to jQuery, $. A selector to query or find the HTML elements you want, just like we were doing with the query selector in the JavaScript part. That's kind of what this is doing here, so you can tell it if you want an ID, a class, or an element itself. And then finally, that .action is just an action to perform by the elements. And I'll give you an example or two of that as we move through here. So some examples here, as you got your $, here, your selector, which is this, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But this is just saying whatever selector we're working with or call, keep using that. Use that as this. And then hide is the action. It hides the current element. Here they're getting the element for the paragraph, and just like we did with the query selectors and all that, you just put it in the parenthesis or in the quotation marks of the element you want. If we wanted the H1, we could put an H1 in there instead, or whatever we want to put in there. And this hides all the paragraph elements on the page. Here they're using the test class, and again we can see it's a class because of why?
It has a period.
Yeah, got that period there for test to show that it's a class. And we're saying that hides all element with the class test. And then finally the
That'd be an ID.
Yep, # is the ID. Hides all the element with the ID of test. And like I said, this being JavaScript library, it works almost just like JavaScript. So like in JavaScript, when we did the query selector, you told it what element, what class, what ID you wanted to select out of that. And same way, it's just you tell it what element, what class, or what ID that you want to select.
By the way, didn't you guys say the real jobs, like the big jobs and little jobs are going away from the DOM and like the document, get document by ID?
JavaScript is trying to go away from get element by ID, but I guarantee if you go look at a lot of older code out there, if you go to a job and you have to maintain a legacy code, you'll probably see that all over the place. So they're trying to go away with it. That's why they're using those query selectors now, just so you can grab any one with a little bit of line of code rather than having to code it out for that get element by ID by itself. But like I said, if you go out and look at legacy code somewhere, I guarantee you'll see that all over the place just because it was so much used in the past. When you use this keyword here, there's no parentheses around it, so just kind of be aware of that. And I'll get into an example of that as we move through. So when you use jQuery, you usually want to start it out with this $document.ready and this function here. What that does is it waits for the page to load, everything to load on the page before it starts running your function or your, I was going to say method, but yeah, function. So just like our DOM content loaded part in the JavaScript that we had talked about the last couple weeks, the jQuery uses document.ready function. Then you put your functions in here that you want to use, and then it will fire off once the page starts running or however you have it done. There's a shorthand version of it where it's $function and the parentheses here. I don't like it that way as much. To me, this is a lot easier to read, a lot cleaner looking than this. Either way works. I stick with the document.ready function just because it's easier to read, looks nice to me. This document.ready, it helps prevent any jQuery code from running before the document's finished loading. That's why the isReady is there. And that keeps it from causing any errors or issues if it starts to run before something's loaded on your page. So good practice to get into is make sure you always use this. Wait for the document to be fully loaded and ready before you start running any of your methods. And that would go up in the head section if you use it. Some examples of actions that can fail if methods run before the document is fully loaded. So if you're trying to hide an element before the page loads and that element's loaded, it could cause an issue. Or trying to get the size of an image that's not loaded yet, that can cause you some more issues there. jQuery selectors, and it goes just back to what we had talked about on the JavaScript part of this. Is just you get the element, whatever element you want, goes in the parentheses, h1, tr, td, anything like that. Element goes and grabs those. Again, the ID, use the pound sign for the ID and the period for the class. More examples of jQuery selectors. If you use a star, that selects all the elements. This just selects the current HTML element. p.intro selects all the elements, or the paragraph elements with the class intro. And then a p:\, first selects the first paragraph element on the page. There's more to it with these selectors. Go take a look real quick. As you can see, all the elements, ID, class, comma, dot class, so you can get elements with the class intro or demo here. The element, you can do element, comma, element to get the h1, a div, and a paragraph element out of your page. There's a colon first, so that gets the first paragraph. Colon last, we'll get the last one. Got the even and odd, so just like when we did the tables in HTML previously, that can get them for you using this tr even, tr odd. Back to the children, so you got first child, so paragraph first child would be all the paragraph elements that are the first child of their parent. So if you had a div and then some paragraphs underneath it, this would grab the paragraphs right underneath that div. First of type, elements that are first paragraph for their parent, and so on and so on. There's quite a few that you can get into if you start digging through them. You can see it goes through quite a bit of them. So if you want to look more into that, you can. These are the basic ones, the first 8 or 10 here, 9 of them or so. That's the selectors. jQuery event methods. jQuery is tailor-made to respond to events in the HTML page. What are events? All the different visitors' actions that a web page can respond to are called events. An event represents a precise moment when something happens. So for examples, moving a mouse over an element, selecting a radio button, clicking on a button, clicking on an element, clicking on a button. The term fires or fire is often used with events. And as a developer, you'll hear that all the time. Somebody says you click on the button and it fires off a function, or click on the button and it fires off this, or fires. You'll hear that a lot as a developer as you continue on with your career for it. So if you hear fires or fired, it just means that an event more than likely is taking place, that something's happening with that event. It's usually calling some kind of a method or a function and doing something. So I use an example here. The key press event is fired the moment you press a key. So just get used to hearing that as you continue on with your development. jQuery syntax for event methods. So in jQuery, most DOM events have an equivalent jQuery method. To assign a click event to all paragraphs on a page, you can do this. So you have your $ here showing that it's accessing the jQuery. Here's your selector here. And what are we selecting with it like that?
The paragraph?
Yep, that's a paragraph element because we have that P in the quotes there. And that's just saying click, so that just adds an event to the paragraphs on the page. The next step is to define what should happen when that event fires. So you must pass a function to the event. So you're saying here now, paragraph click, and then run a function. And usually your functions go inside. So we have our function call, the parentheses behind it. And like I said, when you work with functions and methods, you can usually always tell because of the parentheses behind in case they decide to pass some parameters through. And then the curly brackets is the body where all the action goes in there. And then you just close your parenthesis and semicolon. So commonly used jQuery methods, you got document.ready, and we talked about that already. Just make sure the method allows us to execute a function when the document is fully loaded. The click event, anytime you click on something that fires off a method or function of some sort. The on method attaches one or more event handlers to the selected elements. Here's one here with just one, and you can see they're saying the paragraph, on, click, and then the function call, and this one they're saying with this dot hide, because we're selecting this paragraph, that's what this is accessing, is this paragraph here. So that's the element we're working with, is the paragraph. When you use this, that's what it's accessing, is that element that you're using above it like that. See if I can find something real quick. With these methods, there are quite a few of them. So you have like mouse events, you got click, you got double click, mouse enter, mouse leave. This is a lot of the stuff we've been already doing in JavaScript and whatnot. You got keyboard events like key press, key down, key up. Form events like submit, change, focus, blur. We've been using those already. And then document or window events like window.load or something like that, or resize, scroll, unload. Those would be document window events. So there's a handful of them that you use. We've been using quite a bit of them already with the labs and the homework we've been working on and stuff like that. And so to give you some examples of how this stuff works, I got one here. You can see I'm just getting hold of the content delivery network here. That way I don't have to download the whole entire file. Got my script tag here in the head of my code, and because of this document.ready, I don't have to worry about whether it's going to fire off too soon or not. That way it makes sure it loads. So you can see the document is what I'm selecting from my selector, which is my page. The .ready is the action that it's going to do, and then we're running this function. Our function in here, we use the $. We're getting the ID, or the element of the button, and you can see right here is our element button that we're getting right there. When it gets clicked, run this function. This function says go get our paragraphs and hide the paragraphs. So if I open this with live server, Here's our H2. This is a heading. This is a paragraph. This is another paragraph, and our button. So if we click this button, if we click our button, it should hide our paragraphs. Click the button and it hides the paragraphs. So if we only wanted it to hide one, we can make this like an H3. And because we're saying get the paragraph and hide it, we only have this one paragraph here. And so that's why it's only hiding the one paragraph and leaves the second one there. So if we change this back to a paragraph, now we got two paragraphs. We're just saying grab all the paragraphs here with this element selector, and it's saying hide them. If we change these both to H3s, what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, nothing's going to happen because it's looking for a paragraph. So you can see nothing happens, it just moves the button over. If we change this to an H3, yeah, and then it'll go back and hide them again. Oh, I didn't close my H3s, so that's why my button disappeared too. There, just leaves my button. Took my button away because my tags weren't closed properly. So that kind of shows you how that works. Document.ready, just make sure page is all loaded before it does anything. First thing we do is we call this, go get our button, add a click event to it. With that click event, we're going to run another function. That function is hiding this H3s in here. So that's kind of basic one, works there. Let's see, example of this. Where'd all my examples go? Grab my stuff again. So here we're using this. I got a yellow line because I don't have a title in here. Again, I'm pulling it from the content delivery network, just easier way to doing it. Most of the time you'll see it done this way. Like I said, it saves you a lot of time and space in your files when you're doing your web pages. Again, started out with this document.ready function. We're saying go find the paragraph, click on it, and then hide it. This is saying use the current element. That current element we're using, of course, is this paragraph here. So if we run this, and because we're using the paragraphs and hiding each paragraph this time, now I can click on them one at a time and make them hide. If I make this an H1, this one won't disappear because it's an H1. That one will. That one will. Because they're both paragraphs. So that's how this works when you actually see that. That's all it's doing, is we're saying select the paragraphs. This says use the paragraphs that we're selecting and make them hide. What's that? Yep, because we're saying right here, paragraph, when you click on it, do this, and we could put a P in there, but then it would probably hide all of them at one time, and we don't want to do that. I guess it would maybe do the one. Let's try and see what happens. guess it could only really, yeah. So it makes them both because it's just saying grab all the paragraphs and hide them. Using this, it's just one paragraph at a time. So that's that. Let me go find my last one. So this one here is the on method. And so what we're doing here is we're attaching multiple events to our paragraphs. And like I showed you previously, that's not what I wanted. This on method, here's one with just one method attached to it. One event handler attached. The click, it does the click. It's got the one thing going on there. Here we're doing multiples, so we have a paragraph on, so when the mouse enters it, changes the background color to light gray. When the mouse leaves, changes the background color to light blue. And then when you click on it, changes the background color to yellow. And you can see we're using this, so we're saying just grab the paragraph. So if we had more paragraphs, we could do other things with it. So if we open this with live server, so you can see as we mouse enter, changes it to light gray. When the mouse leaves, changes it to light blue. We click, changes it to yellow. And when we leave again, it changes it back to light blue. So that's how you can, instead of having to do a bunch of different methods or whatever, or functions with that, we can add multiple events to it and then have it do what we want to.
If I'm going to see it, it's just the Java way.
What's that?
It's similar to CSS, it's like more the Java and jQuery, right?
JavaScript.
Yeah, JavaScript.
Yeah, Java's totally different than JavaScript, and people probably get tired of me harping on that, but when you go out in the real world, you want to be able to talk, so you want to make sure you're saying the right things. So yeah, it's using JavaScript to change the CSS is what it's really doing. So, and that's why it's .css. We're saying change that CSS on it, change that background color for all of them, and just the colors that we're changing them to. So that's how the on method works. So if you want to put more event listeners or event handlers on them, that's how you would do it there. So just say mouse enter, run the function. This function takes the paragraph, puts CSS on it, does a background color. And so that's all I'm going to really cover with this. We don't get too much into it in this class. Like I said, at times they say it's a dying language, especially with Bootstrap going back to vanilla JavaScript. But I guarantee you, if you go out in the real world, maintain legacy code, you may run across this. So I just wanted to get you used to what you'll be looking for. So if you see this document.ready part up here in code, you'll be like, oh, okay, I know that's jQuery. If you need to go research it, it makes it a little bit easier to go research the jQuery stuff instead of trying to, I guess the first thing you'd probably do nowadays is ask ChatGPT, what is this kind of a thing. But at least now you know it's jQuery, and you can say, hey, what's this doing in jQuery or whatnot. And then just some of the basic things, you'll see how to call a selector, how to add an event to it, and then the functions, stuff like that. So get you used to that so you see it. Like I said, when you go to Mr. Govmested's class, you'll use it a little bit more. I know he'll show me yesterday that you guys do form validations with it, so you'll be checking to make sure email addresses are proper, that there's no blank form elements as you go through a form. Somebody leaves their name blank, you'll flag it right away, change it colors, and throw up an alert and stuff like that. So